Employment and Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi just getting off the podium after addressing men and women in the steel and metal engineering industry. He said this summit here representing government as social partners will have gathered for these 2 days, this being the labour space, this being government and the private sector, the employers, just to try and craft solutions where this collective bargaining process is concerned. The minister just frank and upfront to say that he still believes and has confidence in the bargaining process, as this is where then the parties will need to find each other and work very hard to ensure that they avoid any strike action where both are losers in the end. I'm going to invite him in the conversation now. The Minister Thulas Nxesi with me right now. Minister, thank you very much for joining us on the SABC, and we see very well that you still have confidence in this collective bargaining process. These parties need to really not talk past each other and be frank around protecting this collective bargaining process, as it's very, very important. Welcome to the SABC.
Thank you. And indeed, I believe very strongly in the centralized collective bargaining, because the reasons are very clear to me. It brings about stability. It brings about stability, it brings about security, and it brings about industrial peace. And if you don't have those, it means the economy cannot be able to grow. There will never be stability in the economy. And with strong trade unions in this particular sector and strong employer groups, I think they are able to meet and have the discussions, and they are able to set the standards. So it's still very, very important, and given the history of this country, you still need that collective bargaining. And of course, there are proposals which are saying there's nothing which is sacrosanct. Things are dynamic, things are changing. At the current moment, there are discussions which are taking place at the level of Katlego about the amendment of the labor law. Let's listen to that. Let's say what is working, what is not working, and what can we replace that with. But we can't remove everything. Currently, history shows us that collective bargaining has been able to stabilize a number of sectors.
I mean, you also touched on the issue of the Employment Equity Act. This is a hot topic in South Africa right now after the president's move in that regard. And we know very well that these are frictions, and it lays squarely at your department as the Labour and Employment Minister to ensure that at least everyone is on the same page where this Employment Equity Act is concerned. Why do you think we have so much concerns where this Employment Equity Act is concerned?
Unfortunately, most of the people have not read this thing. They've just listened to what the opposition party, the scary mongering by the opposition party. The reality is that there's nothing new in the act except that we've come up with the regulations saying for the past 24 years we have allowed the employers to do it on their own. But if you look at the research which has been done, some of the employers, or many of the employers in many sectors, are not moving. Hence now we're saying it's mandatory. We've put it in the regulations, and we've said these are for public comment. Those who want to comment and have different views, let them raise them and give us the proper alternatives on how we're going to implement this. And our argument is very simple. People have gone to whip the emotions of the Indian people in this particular country. We are saying the Indian people are part of the black people who are disadvantaged. But in some sectors, and our research is saying that they've done well in terms of the management positions. But in some sectors, they remain very low. So we're looking at them sector by sector. And we are saying the Africans, the Indians, the colored, the women, and people with disability are not here. Are not there at the management level. There might be some differences, and we're saying to the employers, let them use what we call national demographics, or they can even use the provincial demographics. It's up to them as companies where they are located. But let's debate this matter. We've been able to resolve a very complex thing in this particular country, and we're calling even those who want to go to court. Courts are not going to resolve our problems, but they will just rule, but the problems are going to remain. And people will look at the other ways of dealing with those issues. Come back, give us comments on our proposals and let's deal with them. And we've done it before. We've done it with the minimum wage, which were difficult issues. And we've done it with the health and safety regulations. Fortunately, this sector seems to be far ahead as compared to a number of sectors.
Let's talk then about concerns raised by some federations like COSATU, saying that, when we go to the bargaining table, we often see the employer not honest about the books, about their turnaround. Hence, they tend to cry and foul and cry poverty when they are making all of these, millions and breaking in money while the workers are languishing in poverty. Really, this call by the unions to say there's a need for transparency when we go to the bargaining table, what would be your reaction to that?
Definitely. Transparency is very important. But all I can say, the bargaining tends to be a very emotive issue because it deals with the salaries of the people. Everywhere, salaries of the people, even in the top management. It's always a very difficult issue. But our argument is very simple. It's a give and take. It's about compromises. It's about what is the real situation in terms of the economy in the country, and both sides must take that into consideration. That is our approach, but it's left to the parties. And unfortunately, if they do not agree, we have a labor relations system which is able to deal with the dispute in a constructive way. And one thing which I want to raise, I want to condemn violence, which normally accompanies some of the strikes, where you end up destroying property and so on. We cannot tolerate violence, because sometimes if you destroy the very company you're working on, you put it on fire, what else? So where are those workers going to be employed tomorrow? So if violence must just be condemned, in fact, we must criminalize if violence arising out of some of the strike. But also, the employers should not fan the tensions during that period of the strikes, because emotions are very high.
Minister Nxesi, let's let you go. Thank you very much, sir, for giving us your time. He's coming through as the Employment and Labour Minister, just letting us in on his role here. He just got off the podium where he delivered a keynote address. Of course, frank talks, frank discussions, and most of the players or role players in this sector, all they want is a labour system or a labour environment that is peaceful and where the parties will all get the best out of the Labour Relations Act. I'm Katlego, Legodi, SABC News in Kempton Park.